So I know you and I have had a long talk about property management and operations.
Oh,
and
yes.
You toyed around with it. Also, at one of the collectives, we got into a lot of discussion around this and starting your own business. Do you third party it? It's my belief that this is this is when it all starts to get tested. Right now, the vacancies, the delinquencies, the pandemic, the moratoriums are lifted generally for the most part. We're starting to see some of those evictions work through the system. Expenses are way up. What are some of the things that you're doing, and where do you see rent growth headed? Because it's one thing to buy a building. It's one thing to, put the capital stack against it and buy it and then turn it over or manage it yourself. But making it perform is quite another, right?
Yeah.
So where do you see all that headed?
Yeah, I have a great analogy for you from my CFO. Shout out to John, who provided that. He's like, it's like making a baby. So you acquisition folks all love like the making baby part is fun. Raising the baby is not that easy. So like the operation side of it.
Yeah, it's the truth.
Yeah. So basically, I think there's the challenges in the front with the lending, make things working. The operation part is really the tough part. And we have experienced, I've worked through 5-6 different sets of third-party managers. And one way or the other, fraud is actually a thing in property management, unfortunately, when I pop the hood over there. So things that you have to really watch out for, audit and all that stuff. We're moving towards a self-managed model. We're in the middle of that, which is great being in the collective discussing with Ken, because Ken, you have a self-managed, a vertically integrated, what we call property, which means you own the property management company as well as your investment company. So it's all in the same stack of creating synergy. We're moving towards that model, although Ken's like, it's not a fun work, you don't need to do that unless you really need to. But I think long term, it's going to help us control expenses, and it's going to allow us to really applying our core values to that side of the house, which was a challenge that we had with our third party. Aside from like the fraud or extra fees and any of these things or non-performance, it's also the fact that we can essentially having our values reflected through our day-to-day service to our tenants. So it's a long process for sure. We do see, in terms of answering questions on rents, we do see a little bit soften in the market. Like people are kind of concerned about their day-to-day expenses. So people are not pre-ordering things sights unseen and then in some areas, we even see a little bit of reduction of the rent in Phoenix. Although in the stats perspective, like Phoenix is still going very strong at the high, like 7 or 8% increase compared to last year's 27%, which is ridiculous. But it's the multifamily market still going strong, but the tenants are kind of feeling the pressure. So I think that's another thing to kind of really looking forward to when you're operating this. From the operations side, we kind of discussed this before. We're going to see a lot of management changes because a lot of owners going to have expectation like, oh, this doesn't work, let's just switch a property manager. It's the people that's the issue. That's always the easy excuse. But the markets are also changing. So for us, it's really the people that was the issue. If you don't pay people enough of a wage, you're not going to get the qualified people. So this is a little bit of a hiring philosophy on that. So we're taking them in-house and fighting through that battle right now. But we know long-term, especially even the short-term in a year, once we worked out the kinks, we're going to have a lot more direct control over them and less overhead, because on our investment sites, et cetera, like from the accounting perspective, there's more to kind of spread out. For us, that's kind of just the direction we're seeing. We're going to see probably more people going to be self-managing or switching off property management company. There's some pressures in terms of controlling expenses there.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think this, the property management firms generally in the last 10 years have had a very easy time. Rents have gone up and, occupancies have stayed pretty high generally, and markets have, slowly moved ahead. But now things are changing a bit. We're bumping up on some affordability issues, and And expenses are really jumping off the map right now
Yeah.
for us. I mean, we're battling property taxes and insurance and utilities and labor and supplies, and there's just the marketing costs, and there's so many things that are
Mhm.
jumping on us that we're having to manage. And to your point, when you have it in-house, like I walk right down the hall and sit down with the head of our property management company and start talking about a project directly, and I can make moves that
Mhm.
minute. I can
Mhm.
call up the property and make moves that minute
Yeah.
on occupancy or expenses, or I can call meetings and get my whole entire maintenance staff together and start looking at flooring. I can get people together to run an analysis on our utilities. And these are things that, these next 12 months to 24 months, I think this is, the asset management, property management component. People need to jump on this issue today, and start taking action today, because, these things are really throwing numbers off. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And that was kind of what again, coming out of pain, you kind of come up with new solutions, right? So that was kind of born specifically with that. Because if your property manager is performing, doing the work that you want to, there's really no reason to replace them. But for us, we're seeing some scalability issues with our current property management. And then we had great discussion with the owner, and we have decided that we're going on a different direction. They want to actually ratchet down to smaller properties. We want to grow further out. So that was a natural point to part away. But it's definitely a transition through that, and a painful one, to your point. You have told me about it. But once you kind of get over this, typically takes about 6 months to a year, where you kind of figure out all the parts of your car, then it runs, and it runs a lot more efficient, because it's like Apple products, right? They control all the parts. They have the specs for all the parts. When it's together, it just works. Versus a Microsoft product or Windows, or with third-party hardwares, where there's more pieces, components together. That's the third-party manager. There's a little bit more overheads, and then it moves slower. So to react to the market, this give us a little bit more competitive advantage down the line. Yeah.
So I get this question a lot, and I'd be interested in your answer, especially with what you've been through, because we've shared a lot at the collective, and I'm really happy that you joined, and it's been great to get to know you and your husband, and also to share candidly some of the challenges and wins and mistakes and stuff. But all of us together, we could just kind of talk about that openly. But I'd love for for you to say, when you're hiring a third party management company, because this is kind of the question I get all there. Should I manage myself, or should I not? And I've always done it in-house. You did it out third party, and now you're moving it back in. What are some of the big glaring things that made you just shake your head? And what are some of the things that people should be asking third party management companies, and what would you do differently if you kept outsourcing it?
Yeah, so I would probably go with a company that is this is a perfect asset for that company. So you may want to take a look at what type of asset this company is managing right now, and then what is their performance right now. And see if you can get the contact of the current partners that is working with the company and get a reference. These are good methods to kind of really land a good third-party manager. Even with all these homework, sometimes it fails too. Like, you definitely want to run background check on your property management company owner. We thought we never needed to. We learned the hard way. I'm not gonna get in detail on that. But you gotta run some background checks on folks, kind of understanding their hiring philosophy. Because I'm kind of control person now. I've learned a couple times. And hindsight, it's also their reputation, their rating. Another trick's really cool is if you join the apartment association, your local apartment association, you're going to be able to see the teams that win awards yearly. So the apartment association is basically a collective of, apartment owners, and that they provide a lot of resources for you. And you can kind of look up some of the ratings or who won the awards. Companies that have award-winning teams are typically should be on your top the list to contact if you don't know a person who already know a property manager contact. A reference is always great. A reference can be spotty because the people who use them today or past may not be using them today. And then so that doesn't really reflect what you're going to get in the future. Not always, but a reference is always a strongly preferred, I would say. And oftentimes these company will give you some P&L samples and etc. You want to see what their report look like. Do they have a sophisticated report? If you're managing remotely, could you dive into the details through looking through financial reports? So these are things that I would look at. And also, are they going to do construction in-house or out-of-house? Depends on your strategy for your property. You may want to pick one or the other. If you're taking in-house, construction in-house, then there's markups that they would charge. So you want to keep an eye on that. And if they are doing out-house, then you want to know, hey, how big is your vendor pool? So you want to make sure that they constantly have people that come and work on your stuff, because labor is in shortage right now. And that's also another thing there. A glaring issue, I think you trust your hunches. I know it's not scientific, it's not that, but if you talk to someone, if something didn't quite add up, I learned the hard way. Don't just ignore it, brush it, even if it's a small thing. It always kind of grow bigger. So that's one thing to look at as well. And how happy are the employee working for the company? That's another thing to kind of look for if you're looking for third-party managers.